Hello and welcome back to Copper Star Precision, the channel that is dedicated to getting you more points in your competition shooting sports. Coming at you from the good old Grand Canyon State, and today we're going to be talking about positional shooting using a sling. Now, when we're in our PRS or NRL22 competitions, we generally think of supported positions. Like we're on this tank trap here, we throw our bag down, we place the rifle, we get behind the rifle, we see our target, we have a doped style, all that kind of stuff. Nice supported position, building a strong base. But then there are some stages that require unsupported positions. And I think a lot of people actually get really hesitant about these stages, not because of lack of ability, but because they haven't practiced the techniques that we're going to talk about in this video. So of course, just for YouTube's sake, there's no magazine in this gun. We have an empty chamber flag, so there's nothing in there. And the safety's on, click in the safe direction, nothing, okay, empty. And we're here on the range here, controlled environment. So just get that out of the way. So we're talking about unsupported positions. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to the PRS world or the NRL22 world, there are 4 positions. One would be standing, which is both feet on the ground with your legs straight, something like this. Next position would be kneeling, which either means both knees in contact with the ground, like so. Kneeling can also mean one knee supporting the ground, and this is actually the position I would encourage you to practice here, is one knee on the ground with a support leg up. The next position is going to be sitting, which simply means that your butt is on the ground. And the last position, of course, is going to be prone, which essentially is laying on the ground. So these are unsupported positions, and generally speaking, in these stages, the only equipment that you can use is a sling. Sometimes let you use a bag. If that's the case, you can always take the bag and tuck it underneath, fill this gap in here in order to fill the space, make a more stable position. But today we're talking about slings. So a couple things about slings. There are many different types of slings. There's single point slings, 2-point slings, 3-point slings. There are slings with cuffs, little holes in them that you can stick your arm through. What I'm going to talk about today is what applies most to the PRS NRL22 world. If you are in combat, or if you're a hunter, or if you're a competitive shooter that is doing sort of a, high power rifle sling competition, different slings are going to have different use cases. But today we're going to be talking about the Hasty Sling, which utilizes a 2-point sling. And I think it's applicable to our sport, the PRS NRL22 world, because what's going to happen is it's going to be easy to get in and out of, and it's going to be easy to transition different positions with. So it's not as restrictive as some, but it's also going to give you more stability than simply freehanding it. So we're looking for a fine balance between something like silhouette shooters who aren't allowed to use slings. They have their techniques for balancing the rifle and getting all that kind of stuff, versus the other end of the extreme, which is the sling shooters who use competition jackets, keep everything rigid and stiff. They have the arm cuff that clamps down, makes a really solid position, but it's not very mobile, right? So what I'm going to talk to you today is about, first let me introduce the sling that I have. This is a simple Magpul sling, 2-point sling. It does have the loop in there for a loop or cuff sling technique, but I think it's going to be a little too restrictive for what we're doing, all the moving around. 2-point sling, 2 points of contact with the rifle. If you notice here on the back, I have my normal swivel stud that comes on the rifle. Now, generally speaking, there's going to be another swivel stud here in the stock of the rifle, but I've replaced that because I put an Arca rail that I can use other accessories like bipod, all that kind of stuff. So I don't have a way to attach the sling here. Some stocks have swivel quick detach slots in the forend of the rifle on either side. I would recommend against that, because what we're going to do is we're going to be pulling this and creating tension on this part of the sling, and if you put it on the side, it has a tendency to torque the gun as we apply that tension, depending on what side the quick attach slot is on. So what I actually have here on the front, because I don't have that stud, is I have a quick detach sling swivel stud, and what I've done is I actually have a Arca clamp. So it's an Arca clamp that has a quick detach mount in the middle of it. So this simply attaches to my Arca rail, can go anywhere along here, and then I can pop my sling in like that. So I think it's important to have your sling connection points in line with the axis that runs through the scope and the barrel of an action of the rifle. Okay, so what is the hasty sling method? It's a pretty simple method of creating tension, and what we're trying to do, what the real goal is reducing that wobble when we're in an unsupported position, right? So there's going to be a natural wobble to the firearm, but what we're going to do is we're going to try to minimize that as much as possible by creating a stable position. Just like we use bags and all other kinds of things on tank traps and PRS barricades and all that good stuff, we're trying to create stable shooting positions so that when we apply the fundamentals of marksmanship, such as, you know, trigger control, breathing, sight picture, sight alignment, all that kind of stuff, we make hits on our targets. So what is the hasty sling method? So what it is essentially, I'll show it to you first, and then I'll describe its process. So from a normal position, we're simply going to engage the rifle and pull it tight, just like that. Now that may look complicated, but let me break it down into its core movements, and it's super easy. But as you can see, it's a fast way of getting into a sling position and being able for you to better get stable. So what happens is, all we do is we take our non-shooting hand, non-dominant hand. I'm a right-handed shooter, so I take my left hand. I'm going to pass my left hand through the sling. I'm going to come and turn the sling like this, using my elbow, right? So the back of the sling is on my tricep. My other arm comes up and then comes back to engage the stock of the rifle, and then bring this up like that. So I'll show it to you from a few different positions because I think that will help. Again, so this is from the support side. I take my left hand, because I'm a right-handed shooter, I go through the sling. I use my elbow to bring the sling out. You see how the sling is now behind my tricep there. I come up over the sling here. So my palm is facing upwards to grab the stock of the rifle, but it goes on top of the strap. I engage the rifle like this. I bring the rifle to the shoulder, and now as I slide my forearm back and forth, what I'm doing is I'm creating tension in this part of the sling, which is then pulling straight back from the fore end of the rifle. So just like that, we're on target, close the bolt, engage. So what this is doing, I guess I can show it one more from the front. Again, left hand through, elbow behind, putting the use the elbow to bring the sling behind the tricep, down through, engage, and just like that. We have all the tension up here. I can use my forearm to create more or less tension. And what this is doing is essentially, it's pulling the rifle straight back into our shoulder. Now, if you're using a centerfire gun, you may want to engage more of the shoulder. Since this is a rimfire 22, this is the CZ457 Varmint MTR, little to no recoil on a 22, so I actually prefer just engaging a slight bit of the buttstock. It lets me keep my head in a more upright position when I'm engaging the target. And of course, when we talk about standing, you know, we can alter our stance, we can widen our stance, we can even kick our hip that is towards the target forward, so we can get a little bit of lean here. We can use this tricep part of our forearm, we can rest it against our body, even more stability. And then of course, practice good breathing. You'll notice that when you breathe in this position, if you breathe in, I'm exaggerating this of course, but when you breathe in, the rifle will tend to go up. So what I like to do is I like to get on target, take a deep breath, rifle goes up, start to exhale, I see the target come into vision, and at the bottom of that respiratory pause, that's when I engage the target. So, hasty sling method is going to be super easy. It's easy to get in and out of, but it's something you have to practice. And of course, whatever method you practice the most that you feel comfortable with is what you're going to do best at. But essentially, you know, at something at full speed, stage starts, you hear the beep, beep, easy enough to just get the rifle in position, just like that. You know, it was a couple seconds. We're basically in the starting position for if it was starting with a standard unsupported position, we're already there. Essentially looking through my scope, finding my target, close the bolt, breathe in, respiratory pause, and then engage. So what about the other positions that we discussed? So from standing, if we're starting the stage standing, again, through, around, bring it up like this. That's our standing, very stable position here. My legs are spread apart. I can even move my hip towards the target, kind of pull my arm into the side of my body, even more stability here. Let's say we engage our target standing. We have to move to a kneeling position. Bolt open on any movement. I can stay in the sling. This is another important part of this sling technique. Notice how when I'm here, all of the rifle is essentially supported from this arm creating tension on the sling and my shoulder, right? This arm is completely free to do whatever. I don't need to drive the rifle with my trigger hand. So the only thing that this hand is doing is working the bolt, engaging the trigger, and I can also use this hand to dial turrets, set parallax, etc. So that's why it's an extremely stable position. So we can stay in this position and transition to any of the other positions. So let's take kneeling for an example. We're going to go down. We're still in the sling, hasty sling position. I'm going to drop to my, whatever your dominant hand is, or dominant shooting hand, trigger hand, drop to that knee. So in this case, my right knee. I'm going to put out my left knee towards the target. And depending on how flexible you are and how comfortable you are in body position, I'm going to get as low to the ground as possible by sitting on my right leg. So I'm sitting on my leg, and then I'm going to engage the target. Now notice how here I'm leaning forward into the rifle, and notice where my elbow and my knee are. I don't want to put my elbow on my knee. This bone-to-bone contact, the bottom of your elbow to the top of your kneecap, is not very stable. Whenever possible, we want bone to muscle contact because we have something hard going to something relatively squishy. It creates a more stable position than two hard objects rubbing against each other, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually put my tricep over my knee, and here, create tension, much more stable than bone on bone. So if you can't lean forward, if you're not flexible enough to lean forward, try putting your elbow right behind your knee. This way, also very stable. Now here, when I breathe in, notice how I'm exaggerating again, but the rifle tips down. So when I look at my target, I see my target, breathe in, and I'm going to breathe out. The radical is going to move slowly up. I see the target, respiratory pause, and engage. So very stable position here, especially if you can flexible enough to sit on one leg. Again, putting your elbow into the top part of your thigh or putting your knee into the bottom part of your tricep is going to give you the most stability. So from here, it's pretty easy. We can simply go seated. In the seated position, what we're doing is somewhat of the same thing. Now there's a lot of different ways to do this depending on your flexibility, your mobility, anything like that. I've seen people cross their legs out front, kind of dig both their elbows into the top of their thighs. This is a very popular position here, very stable. Sometimes you can put your feet together and go on the inside of essentially your knee joint. So on the inside, again, not making bone-to-bone contact, but going in between, putting the elbows in there. What I like about this style here is by squeezing or relaxing my knees, sort of in a butterfly pattern, I'm actually changing the elevation of the rifle. So instead of driving the rifle with my hands, I can drive the rifle with my support base and my knees. So here I can move up and move down, right? Again, I'm exaggerating, of course. You just have to practice it. You can also spread legs a little wider, get a little closer. So lots of different options for seated. Cross leg, again. Here you don't have as much elevation control with your legs, but it might be more stable for you, so it's a trade-off. Here I have elevation control with the legs. I can raise, I can lower, and I can engage. And then of course prone, again, this whole time we have not had to get out of the hasty sling, but if we did, for whatever reason, it's easy enough to get back into, elbow through, wrap around. We're going to engage a good prone position here. This should be the most stable position. You're closest to the ground, lowest center of gravity. Here again, when I breathe in, again exaggerating, the rifle dips down, so I find my target, breathe in. When I breathe out, the radical comes up to target, respiratory pause, engage, and make hits. So again, all that tension is coming here through the strap, pulling the rifle straight back into our shoulder, and very stable. Almost as stable as you can get on some barricades. So, we discussed the 4 positions: standing, kneeling, sitting, prone. We talked about the hasty sling, how we get in to the hasty sling position. Out is simply the reverse. Very easy, very quick. Not fiddling with, you know, sometimes you'll see people, they'll use these arm cuffs in a loop sling fashion. They'll bring this, they'll go like this, they'll hike this up, they'll tighten this down. I mean, this is a mess. You know, you're doing this on the clock, you know, trying to get this thing. Forget all that. Try the hasty sling method. And if it works for you, well, that's worth a like and subscribe, right? If you found this video helpful, definitely like and subscribe to the channel. The reason I made this video is because coming up in the June course of fire, there's going to be a positional stage. It's the first stage where we have 4 shots from the prone, 2 shots from sitting, 4 shots from kneeling. So hopefully these tips and tricks, the hasty sling method, again, very easy to get right on target in unsupported positional shooting. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Until then, happy shooting.